My little pony, what is friendship all about? My little
My capstone project was on the Brony community. The Brony community is an online community of male adults between the ages of 18 to 25 who are fans of the show My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. For my project, I interviewed a Brony named Andy. I also interviewed media professors who shed light on fan communities.
Before I actually started watching the show, a friend of mine, actually a lot of my friends were like, hey, you should watch the show. I'm like, no, I'm not going to watch a show about ponies. It's dumb. That's like straight up what I said. A year later, I needed a show to watch, and people were still talking about it. So I'm like, you know what, let me give it a shot. And I did. And it ended up being better than I expected.
Actually,
So.
am of the perspective that fan communities are actually more about the communities than they are about the fandom. And this goes, a lot of times I get people asking me things like, I don't understand why people love this, or I don't understand why people love that. And I think that a lot of the reason why people do love it is because it has an interpersonal connection. And so when you love something like a particular text, or when you love a movie, or when you love Star Wars, or when you love Star Trek, you can love it on your own, but fan communities are really about the sharing that comes with it, the fact that you have something in common with other people. And so it's really about common language, common bonds, common knowledge, common understanding, common focus, common goals. And that's really what strengthens things. And fan communities can be glorious things.
Alright, so if you didn't know, the first season is by Lauren Faust. Lauren Faust, she's known for working on cartoons like Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends, Powerpuff Girls, just to name a few. And people love her. I mean, she's great. She's a great animator, and she's really smart. Her work's really good. When people heard that she was making a TV show, it was like, and then this guy, some guy writing some article, I don't remember his name. If you look into it though, he wrote this huge article about how sad it was to see Lauren Faust making a TV show for a product. That's how bad marketing has gone these days. Ironically, it had the opposite effect. People read his article and were like, wait, Lauren Faust is making a new TV show? We're going to have to check this out. And people started watching it. And it started on 4chan. Brony started appearing there. That's where the B, or it was like, in
So
B.
4chan is
Oh,
like
4chan.
the Western iteration of, it's the convergence of a Japanese strand of internet and a Western strand of internet. And both of these cultures are what I'm temporarily calling transgressive, even though I think that term is pretty empty at this point. What I sort of mean by that is they're responsible for a lot of what we consider in offline normative terms to be deviant culture. They produce a lot of the memes that we see on the internet. Lolcats originated on 4chan. Image macros, which is, the juxtaposition of text on an image to display like an emotion or reaction to something, that originated from the precursors to 4chan. So something awful, or Ayashi World, or 2channel, Ni-channel, I guess, yeah.
And everything has a community. I'm sure Littlest Pet Shop has its own community right now. It's just like how open they are about it. So when Brony started becoming more open, more people were willing to, join in.
Oftentimes, media that has a more masculinized approach is valorized more than that which is feminized, which is part of the problem with Bronies, is that we've got a feminized media that's being valorized by men, and that worries a lot of people.
Girls are expected to like boy-oriented shows. For the longest time, there were so few shows, programs that were pitched to young girls that they had to watch boy shows and kind of do that, right? But the reverse wasn't true so much, that boys tend to not like feminine-oriented or girl-oriented programs. So this has come around, the Bronies have come around as a way to upend that presumption about who likes what. So part of that, it's also then a question of, originally, did people like it authentically? Did they like it ironically? As it turns out, no matter how it started, and I think it's hard to figure out really what drew people initially, but I think it was probably a combination of some people were maybe close to being anti-fans of it and liked to make fun of it, or some of people were just kind of curious, and then it had this sort of almost like cult-like emergence and crystallization, and people just really began to actually like it and share it. And so part of it is, it has not just surprised people because it's been inadvertent, but really flipped gender expectations in audiences. And that's quite.
Lauren Faust, she found about Bronies like day 2. She's a fan of them, and she's very happy that they exist. That that there are people willing to watch a television show, regardless of the gender stereotypes. Because she's a huge proponent of like little girls being allowed to watch guy television shows, or she doesn't like how a lot of women's television is just crap. Like, it's not made well because they think, oh, well, it's from women, so it can be crap. Like, she really hates that. So that's why she wanted to make the show, good. And she succeeded. I don't know. It's hard to say.
Well, part of it, right, was the fact that this version of My Little Pony, as a kind of revamp of the 80s franchise, wasn't just pitched for kids, in a way, right? It's like so many other animated programs over the last 15 years, from really more adult-oriented ones like Simpsons, but also SpongeBob, right? It's like these things have a kind of adult meaning built into it too, that you can see the different levels of meaning. You can enjoy it like a kid would. The kid can see some things, but then parents especially can also watch with their kids because they're making references to pop culture or some other things. So that was already built into it, that it was already going to be smarter than just a kid's show. But what's really, I guess, kind of compelling and unique about it was that it was a revamp of a previously, pretty simple kids show. But now, it does have sort of these complex layers.
When I would wake up in the morning, I would catch the last 5 minutes of Strawberry Shortcake, and as I was saying before, it was god-awful. Everybody was talking slow, they had, like, tea parties, like, it was definitely, like, berating the intelligence of the viewers. Like, I'm sure even little girls are like, I don't know, I'm not a little girl, I wouldn't know. But, when you watch, like, Ponies, it doesn't have, like, any of that. Like, the show's pacing and the way they speak, it's all genuine. Like, it's none of that, like, like, admonishing, parent kind of tone where, like, you talk to the children slowly because you don't think they're smart enough to handle it. And when you see that in a show, these days, like people like that. So, like, people like Adventure Time because the show doesn't make you think you're dumb. It just does what it does, and it does it well. It doesn't go out of its way to, make you feel like you're a dumb kid. So, if you watch, like, other shows these days, like cartoons and whatnot, they do that. They don't think the viewers are smart enough to handle the content or something. I don't know what the problem is, but, like, compared to the shows back in the day, not to sound like a nostalgia whore, but those stores, those shows back in the day, they didn't question your intelligence. They just did what they did, and they did it well. Favorite episode? Since it's character-based, pretty much any episode where, like, Pinkie Pie's, like, the main one of that episode is, like, one of my favorites. But definitely Party of One is my favorite. Yeah, I know the episode title, and I also know the episode number. It's episode 25 of the first season. My favorite character is Pinkie Pie.
Socioeconomics are really interesting. To a certain extent, people who are involved in fandom have money to spend. Because fandom is conspicuous consumption. That is what it is. Because fans build collections. It isn't always about a lot of money. It isn't always about showing off wealth, but it is about showing off knowledge. And a lot of the ways that you show off knowledge is about acquiring things. So you go to fan conventions and you buy a lot of exclusive things. It's about you owning the T-shirts or owning the first edition or owning.
With
things.
Bronies, it's almost like that self-stigmatization, that proud self-stigmatization, and the wearing of the brand, and the buying into the brand, and the wearing of the costumes at conventions. It's almost like by diminishing what we see as normative signifiers of masculinity, it's like proudly claiming the label of the beta male to reassert masculinity within that community of beta males. And I think that's a really interesting phenomenon, especially since it was so prevalent on 4chan. And there's the MLP board now on 4chan that is specifically for ponies. And, you know, I wonder if it's like a kind of masculinity that's being asserted around cuteness, which is also interesting, as opposed to, you know, traditional signifiers of masculine superiority, quote unquote, on 4chan, which is usually around trolling or outwitting each other. So you have this whole link between intellectual prowess and deception and cleverness and these things that we kind of associate with like trickster figures or more negative figures, untrustworthy figures. And then you have the flip side of that now, which is this brony subculture, which is not all male, but is largely male, I think, from the research, the little research I've read. Yeah. And it's also called, you know, bronies. But they're also associated with B. Brony was written with the /B to signify the board. And if you were a quote-unquote B-tard, you could also be a quote-unquote bro. So then bro became brony, which already softens that, you know, that alpha male kind of signifier of being a bro, and is occurring around cute affect and the promotion of cute affect and trying to, like, engage others in these, you know, somatic responses to cuteness instead of the usual male withdrawal from things like that.